Today's video is going to be a fun one. We're sitting down and we're going to talk about different high budget ranges and what we would do with certain amounts. Now, before we get too far into the video, I first want to go ahead and introduce my co-host today. This is Grill. I'm sure most of you guys are probably familiar with him. He's one of the co-founders of Masters of Materium, but I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself.
Hello everyone, my name is Grill. I am the CEO, aka Raid Master for the Masters of Materium. It's good to be here today, Mr. Hammer.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about what you do for the Masters of Materium.
These days not much. We need some playtest action here, or some game action. I'm going to be in charge of organizing how everything works in game, raids, supply chain, stuff like that. Also try to, talk to people, get familiar with them.
For sure. One of the reasons I picked Grill for this video, and I thought he'd be a good fit, is because Grill is somebody with a higher wallet. He actually owns one of the only archdukes in the entire world of Mirandus. So it'll be really interesting to hear what he prioritizes over, or which type of NFT he prioritizes over the others. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about three different budget ranges. The first range is going to be $5,000 to $10,000. The second budget range is going to be $10,000 to $20,000, and the third budget range is just going to be $20,000 and above. So that one's going to be a little bit more. That one's less what to buy and more so just kind of general strategy. Now, also keep in mind, none of this is financial advice. This is two crypto bros sitting down and talking about what we do with a bunch of money. Well, all right, let's go ahead and get into it. So the very first budget range is going to be $5,000 to $10,000. Now, we were kind of chatting before this, and this one might be the hardest of all of the ranges because there's so much you can do, yet so little you can do with this range. So, Grill, why don't you go ahead and talk about what you would prioritize in the $5,000 to $10,000 range?
Absolutely. So first of all, this is a really good time to get in the market. I think we're pretty close to the bottom here. So even in this range, your money's going to stretch much further than would have, a year ago. So $5,000 to $10,000 is I would, and this is going to go for pretty much all the categories. If you can pick up a deed, a land deed, that's always going to be your go-to move. They give you all the power. You're in the game. You're part of the, integral part of the economy and how everything's going to work with Mirandus. So I would aim for either an outpost, a farming hamlet, a ranching hamlet. I think some of those hamlets have gone between about $4,000 or $5,000 to $8,000 for the lower end would be for the farming, and like $8,000 for like the ranching. Outposts are currently listed for a little under 4, so they're kind of in right below that range too. Yeah, pretty cheap, man.
Yeah, so I'm actually heavily considering. I know in my last video I said my last buy was going to be a homestead, but I'm heavily considering chasing an outpost at the current prices. So hey, if anyone wants to cut me a deal, I might be a buyer. No, really though, outposts, hamlets, that's probably going to be the main thing that you'd pick up for that. What do you think as far as, so assuming they pick up a ranching hamlet, or sorry, assuming we pick up a ranching hamlet for $8,000, if you have that $2,000 left over, would you be chasing exemplars or would you be chasing buildings after that?
I would try to fill up by my deed with buildings first. That would be kind of the first move. I think that gives you ultimate control of your deed, right? So if you want to pick it up and move it, you don't have to worry about anyone. You rent it out to somebody who had to, like the way they run this shop. Well, now you're stuck with it maybe for a month or maybe even more. I don't know how the leases are going to work in game. It's really hard to say anything about real detailed specifics at this point. But
yeah,
buildings would be my first choice. After that, definitely exemplars. True providers to work. The hamlets, and then maybe some exemplars that correspond to the buildings that you're putting on your hamlet as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the box to go with those.
Right.
And
Man,
then Go ahead. Sorry.
There's been some Voxes. Sorry, I'm kind of going off here. There's been some Vox sell for super cheap lately. Like there was a troll Vox that sold for 1K. There was a wolf Vox that sold for a K, and it's like that's also very tempting.
Yeah. You know, it's just well, we don't have that much information even about the land deeds. We kind of have an idea of what they're going to do. We have almost no information about how the boxes are going to work in game. I would say they're a little more speculative, a little more risky. Where I think a land deed's like a sure thing at this point. Pretty tough to argue. I mean, with 10K, with cheap enough, you can almost get 2 farming hamlets. That's to me is like the ultimate play. You have to get a little lucky for that.
Yeah, if you could get I mean, if I could pick up a farming hamlet for 5K, I absolutely would. Like, I do it right now. Yeah. It's just finding that 5K farming hamlet would be kind of hard. I did see. So I looked earlier today, and I saw that there was an outpost that was listed for the 4,500 or something like that. So
now it's down to 38. So
it's down to 38 now. Oh man, I might have to pick it up after this video.
I think.
Let's see. Okay. Well,
2.1 ether right now.
By the time you guys are watching this, I may own an outpost. We'll see.
Oh, it's a private listing.
Oh, is it really?
You could try to message the seller though that have information on their OpenSea. You can try searching on the Gala Discord.
Yeah, I might have to.
When I was hunting for stuff, I was looking for them on Discord. I was messaging people like, you want that good price, you got to hustle, right?
That's true. Maybe this isn't a good idea to have you on, because you're making me make bad decisions, bad financial decisions.
I've never done that to anyone ever. I promise.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we're looking at definitely some sort of landy. That's the staple for the $5,000 to $10,000 range, and then some matching exemplars or some buildings to fill up that deed, and then some potentially some exemplars to go with that. So assuming that's the case, you can't really afford a halfling or an elf unless you go with like a $5,000 or less deed, really, because I mean elves are sitting at like what, 1,000 to 2,000 right now.
Something like that. Yeah, some of the dark suns are a little more, and then stuff like the bright suns and earthlights are kind of on the cheaper end.
Yeah.
So it depends what you go for. It depends what the market is. Sometimes you get lucky. So this chance to really kind of get a nice, well-rounded wallet, even with that range.
Yeah, that's enough to be dangerous, but it's also not enough to be like lethal. So you can get a lot with that, but you still have to kind of hold back just a little bit because,
you gotta make smart decisions regardless.
Definitely, yeah.
You got to kind of think, look at what you really want and make decisions like, I want this, but maybe I can't get this, and I want to, make sure I get this other thing first. There's a couple other options too. You could just load up on exemplars and Vox, maybe. That'd be kind of like an alternate option. Maybe you don't want to run a land deed. Maybe you're not interested in, or maybe you just can't seem to get it for the price. Exemplars are really cheap right now.
That is for sure. Like, didn't elves release in the Gala store for 5K?
Yeah, I didn't buy an Earthlight. I bought this. What was the second one? Earthlight. Yeah, I bought one for 5K.
Okay.
At the store when they were released, and sold it down. A month later. But they were 5K initially.
So you're already looking at over half or 50% discount. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Now, one other thing to think about is so. I don't have Miranda's hub pulled up in front of me. I really should, to check out and see how many deeds are, or how many building plots are on each deed. But if I remember right, I think like a farming has 3 10x10s and 4 or 5 5x5s.
Yeah. It's got 4 smalls, 3 mediums.
Okay, cool. So
4 ranching and 36 farming plots.
And what's the going price for buildings right now? I actually haven't even I haven't looked.
Really cheap. It depends. So if you're gonna get food related buildings, they're usually a little more. So
because mom owns them all.
Part of it. They're also lower mint, higher rarity.
Okay.
The people who own them are not necessarily selling.
Mom's not selling.
Kind of like the cheapest bakery is $900 right now. Now you look at the recent sales, they're probably a little less. Yeah, like 0.3 ether. So, but one sold for 1,000. A bakery hasn't changed hands in 3 months.
That's crazy.
That tells you how thin the market. Yeah.
Are there 200 of those?
There is 200 of all the food buildings. Yeah.
Okay.
So bakery, brewery, dairy, and butchery.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So.
All right, but yeah, so basically I had some sort of staple land deed and some buildings to go with it, and then after that you're not really left with a whole lot depending on what you actually go with. Personally, if it were me, I think that I would try and shoot for a farming hamlet, because a farming hamlet would leave more room for exemplars and buildings, and you'd still be able to pick up an elf. I'm a big believer in having one main exemplar and just doing very well with him, but that's my play style. So the grill may be different, and you may also be different. So you may just want to have different exemplars to run different buildings. So, but I think my personal strategy would be some sort of would be the farming hamlet, maybe a few buildings to go on it, and then an elf to go with that. And I think that that would probably satisfy my range.
I think that'd be a pretty good kind of portfolio for most people.
Yeah.
There is one other option in this range. That's what kind of makes this price range a little interesting, and that would be going like heavy into naval assets. So docks in the last month or so have traded between 1,000 and 2,500. Crays have traded between 650 and 850, and Picards have traded between 300 and 500. So you could get yourself a little fleet in some places to dock them up, and some seafarers, some Vox, and just go full naval if you wanted to.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, and those are all assets that you can use no matter what. Like there's not like you have to, find rental for a building or anything like that. You place your docks down and the spots will go out in game, and then you'll have boats to park there and exemplars to use. So that was kind of like a third option I was looking at as well.
That's really not a bad idea, because you'd essentially, I mean, depending on how much really you put into it, but you'd own a decent portion of those assets, and so you'd kind of own a small portion, I guess, of the naval.
You would have a nice little fleet of like inland or coastal water type boats.
Mm-hmm.
And places to park them, do some local trade and stuff like that.
Yeah, and honestly, you might even be able to get in with a guild or with a couple different hamlets or towns or something like that, and just have like contracts, maybe not actual contracts, but do work for them consistently. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I thought that was a kind of a third. There's also we forgot to talk about horses.
Horses, yeah.
You'd almost definitely want a horse in any of these. With this much money, there's no reason not to have at least an uncommon horse.
That's a good point. I actually didn't mention horses in my last video, which is kind of a blunder on my part, because I definitely feel like a horse would fit in the $1,000 to $5,000 range.
For sure. How much are horses, right?
I think I don't know, because they burned them. So
yeah, well, let's see what they're going for in open sea.
Probably 800 is a complete guess. If they're under that, I might have to.
So they're listed for 300, but what are the more recent trades?
Whoa.
Well, they haven't traded. The most recent one was 30 days ago, and that was 0.1123 ether.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot cheaper than I thought. I guess I'm gonna have to quit making me make bad decisions. I think I'm gonna have to pick up a horse because I still don't have one.
Yeah, so that was like $200.
Cool.
Still quite a bit over the store price. The store price was $75 for those. But,
yeah.
They've come down. For a while. They were trading in like kind of like the $500 range. So
yeah.
They're down quite a bit, like everything else is right now. This is like the best. If you're going to enter the market, this is
very good time.
Like these prices are lower than what they were when I got into this 2.5 years ago. So
that's kind of crazy, especially seeing as like homesteads, which are now going for 700,000-800,000, were sold for like 20. Well, were listed for 25,000-30,000. I think a couple of them did sell for that. So
yeah, I think some sold for like 5 ether, and ether was.
That was
$4,000,
4,000, yeah, 4,500, whatever it was.
Some might even want more. I'm not sure. I'd have to look, but they trade pretty frequently. It'll take me a little while to dig it up.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
All right. Okay. So we kind of wandered off. Let's now talk about the $10,000 to $20,000 range. I think this is going to get a little bit easier, and I think that this is also kind of going to keep the same strategy though. Like essentially one or two main deeds, and then past that maybe some exemplars to run those deeds and whatnot. But what are your thoughts and opinions on the $10,000 to $20,000 range?
Yeah. So the biggest change here would be like trying shooting for a village, whether it be a farmer, Viscount, or Earl. So an Earl recently sold for 10 ether, which was about 20k at the time, which is kind of the top of that range. But if you can land a that's the biggest village. If you can land that,
That would be
you do that and you
huge.
sit on it, and maybe over time you can add a little more, pick up a couple little things for it. But landing one of those villages would absolutely be the best play. You could even add a Baron to that list. I'm not a huge fan of the Baron, but obviously a Baron would be part of that too. But Farmer, Viscount, Earl, any of those would be amazing pickups. You could easily get multiple hamlets in this range, even multiple ranching hamlets, exemplars, vox, buildings, horses. Trying to think what else. Dragon cards. Like you can start really filling out a full profile if you go like multiple hamlets, especially if you get a couple of farming hamlets in the 5,000 or 6,000 range.
Right.
That leaves you $10,000 to $8,000 to play with, which is almost the entire budget of the last year we're talking about, right? So.
Yeah, for sure. Just because it was killing me not to have it up, I went ahead and pulled up Miranda Sub, so now I can see and show what different deeds have. So if we're looking at villages, you said village of the what? Was it the Viscount?
The Viscount. There's Baron, Farmer, Viscount, Earl. Those are your 4 villages.
Yes. Which one did you say was at that top range, or was going
for
for 20?
The Earl. So the Earl went
Earl.
for 10 within the last couple weeks, month. Let me see exactly what that was.
Dang, that's really not too bad considering how much you have. Like that fits one 10 by 20 building, and yeah.
So that was on June 30th. That sold.
Okay.
10 ether. They were $60,000 off the store, so that's a pretty good discount right there.
That's a very good discount.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Okay, so essentially though, the strategy kind of remains the same, but at this point, more of your funds will be needed to fill up building plots, because you're looking at, well, I guess if you're able to score a village, you're looking at probably 10 to 15 different 5x5s, and then you've got 10 by 10s, and then you've also potentially got the 10 by 20s. So yeah, I think just a larger portion is going to be allocated to buildings.
Yeah, so if you landed a Viscount, that's 23 plots, 12 small, 10 medium, and 1 large that you would have to fill out.
Okay.
Might be a little hard to do that with that budget range.
It's going to be stretching a little.
But you don't necessarily have to own every building.
Right.
There's certain stuff like, people with potion and jeweler shops, they're going to definitely be wanting to place those buildings, and you're definitely going to want to have them there. So those are things you probably don't own. Same thing with people with larges. Like, those people with larges are going to be absolutely fighting for spots.
That is true.
They're super, super limited. At the same time, you'd also, controlling the large would also economically be the most, would be the best thing that you could do to earn on your deed. But if you can't afford the building or you can't acquire the building, there's also a lot of options like, are you near farms? Well, then maybe you want to put, some kind of large food producing building. Are you out in the wild? Then maybe, a large inn or a large tavern. No, I'm not crazy about taverns, but those are just options.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. Is there like lots of mountains near you? Or maybe you want a large forge there, right? To produce the things that come out of, the mountains, all the ore, all the resources from there. So,
and the location, yeah, you're right. The location could totally change what buildings you want to put down.
Oh, totally. Maybe you're surrounded by farming hamlets and you just run like lots of mills, bakeries, breweries, stuff like that. And you forego some of the other stuff, except for maybe the potion and the jeweler, just because they're such powerful buildings, and 100%, people are going to want those there because it's going to bring people into your town.
Definitely. Well, cool. Okay, so yeah, I feel like that covers the 10 to 20 pretty well. Obviously, you're going to have a little bit more playroom, so unless you're able to pick up a village, and that takes most of your funds, but
yeah, but then you're sitting on something that's 1 of 20, right?
Yeah, that's very true. You just get you a human exemplar and a village, and set foot in the world of Miranda's. Hey, actually, human exemplars are $50 right now. That's
that's what I'm saying. You could just go load up on exemplars right now. Really, really cheap. Like, you can get an army.
Actually, yeah.
Even with the first budget, right?
Right.
And that could be quite viable. Like, we don't know. Again, without specifics, we can't say, "Oh, this is definitely the best play." Or,
for sure.
Will 100 exemplars outpace the farming hamlet? I don't know. It might. It may not, though. Farming hamlets, or hamlets and landies in general, I think are going to really be really pump out the Materium or Gallo, whatever coin they wind up using.
For sure. And that's something that I was going to ask you later on, but we might as well go ahead and touch on it right now. What are your thoughts on, which you kind of talked through it, but an exemplar only wallet and just banking on renting exemplars as opposed to going the bigger land deed. So how do you think that'll?
I think it's very viable. So you can't play the game without an exemplar, right?
Right.
So ideally, those exemplars are going to get lots and lots of game time. Like, the game is really going to be in a good place when those exemplars are all rented out 24/7 and there's a queue to get on, waiting for people to get off spots.
Right. So, yeah.
I think you can never go wrong with exemplars. Whenever people ask me, and I've, for years now, people are like, oh, what should I buy? I'm like, buy an exemplar. It gets you into the game. You don't have to worry about placing buildings. You don't have to spend crazy amounts of money on stuff. It's a quote unquote cheap entrance. At the time they were more money, but like, even $50 could be a lot of money to somebody, right? We're not trying to be like,
totally.
Like elitist here, right? So, everyone's got different budgets.
$50 is the price of a Web 2 game. I mean, it's actually a little bit cheaper,
exactly.
But even still, that's regarded as expensive sometimes, and people don't want to buy it. So, I mean, that's completely understandable.
Yeah. So, I think exemplar only could be viable. That said, land deed really should be. I will stick with land deed being better. Doesn't mean it necessarily is, but
right. Yeah.
I think there's definitely potential for an exemplar only wall to be quite strong as well.
Right. All right. Now that leads us into the final category, which is $20,000 and up. So, before we go too deep into this, as I mentioned earlier, Grill is one of the only owners of the Town of the Archduke. Now, there are only 5 of these bad boys in the game, which is crazy. This thing's sitting at 22 5x5s, 18 10x10s, 4 10x20s, and 3 20x20s. That's a lot for buildings. So how are you navigating getting all of these buildings? Are you getting like extra buildings? Are you going to rent some of them out, or what's your plan?
I've already promised spots to some people. So a little while back, I threw up a post in our Discord offering members some spots because I doubt I'm going to be able to fill all these building spots come release, especially some of the larger ones. I'd like to have like large jeweler, large outfitter, large potion shop. Outfitter hasn't released on the store, and the other two basically never trade and are ridiculously expensive. I don't own either one of them. I might be able to acquire some grand plots. I did have a grand cemetery. I sold to a guild member. I told him he'll be able to place it. I mean, that's part of the deal with the sale, is that he'll have that spot on my deed. But yeah, it's pretty hard. That's a lot of buildings to fill.
That's a ton of buildings to fill. Yeah, that's it. So how do you think, as someone who owns, who really does, do the thing, how are you going to run all of the buildings by yourself? Do you think that you're going to have to hire people out to like run portions of your town?
I think I could probably manage it. Remember, you're going to have to... Every shop's going to have its own, unless I own like a large portion of the shops, in which case I would find people to run the buildings for me. You almost got to look at these kind of things almost like a corporation, right?
Right.
The person who owns the company doesn't just do everything by himself. So
that's fair.
They hire management. Like, you're going to need, just in our guild on a grander scale, right? It's going to be the same kind of deal. You're going to need management, and then levels of management, and then, people doing specialized tasks and all sorts of stuff up and down the whole chain.
Yep. No,
to
that
run
makes
things
sense.
in an efficient manner. I think looking at this not in that sense, you're going to set yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Nope.
Even at the small level, like even with the small land deed, like you got to treat this stuff like a business. Yeah, it's still a game and should be fun, right? And I think it will be fun. I think that can be fun, just managing things. I did that
for sure.
For a family business for 20 years. So.
And that kind of is a game. No, but
yeah,
you're absolutely right. And this is a game, yes. But if people have a bad experience, that is chalked up to business. If someone goes to your business and wants to buy something and they have a bad experience, they're not going to come back, even if it is a game. It still didn't change the fact that was a bad business. So I definitely think you're right about that. Actually, little side story. So I just moved apartments, and our previous landlord, he had like several different property managers and things like that, and it was a great experience. But this new guy, he owns a ton of properties and doesn't have a property manager, and so it's such a funky process of whether it's paying him or communicating with him. It's like it's so much extra stress on him because he has to individually message 100, 200, however many people, as opposed to having a property manager. So in terms of Mirandus, having some sort of property manager to run things could absolutely be huge. Maybe necessary. We'll see. It depends on, how much you actually want to get your hands into it. But
it also depends on how streamlined some of the interactions are. Like, if I can go into like a phone app and set like rates and, take a look at how the buildings are doing. It all depends on what kind of information we're getting.
That's a great point. Yeah.
From the game itself. Like, it's really hard to say exactly, with everything else, there's no fine details of this game yet. So it's all general concepts that we can come up with and how things might work and how we might manage things. But it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to handle stuff on that larger scale in terms of management without people like, not having any time to have a life.
Yeah, people actually have to live a real life while doing all this too. So.
No, come on.
I mean, during the playtest, I know that you didn't have a life, and I know that I didn't have a life. So it'll be interesting to see what it's like when the actual game comes out.
I thought you just sit down at your computer and take a USB cord and plug it into your ear. Right?
SAO style.
That's right.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. Really. One other side story before we move on. So I want to bring my screen back up for a second. So this sword back here in the background, I think you can see my mouse. That's actually a sword from SAO. One of the new places that I moved to has a bunch of swords, and they had an SAO sword, and that's my favorite anime. So I was like, I'm absolutely picking that up.
I need to finish watching it. I'm on the first part of this third season, part 1, I guess, since they kind of split that one, right?
Yeah,
Alicization?
right.
Yeah.
Alicization.
So I'm like a couple of, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
I'm like a couple of episodes in, and then I don't know, life got in the way and I stopped watching it. I got to get back to it though. It's a good series though. I do enjoy it, especially if you're in this space. It like makes a lot of sense.
Definitely does. It absolutely does. And just a little bit more on SAO, and then we'll go back to this, I promise. But it is such a good anime. It gives me Mirandus vibes to a T. Maybe not like the whole die thing, but
hopefully not.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case. If
any indication, we're not living very long.
Hey, hashtag make Mirandus hard, right?
Yeah. Not that hard, please. I like this. I like to get a little for a few more years, please.
All right. Okay. So, kind of going back to this. So, if you're looking at a budget of 20,000 or more, this is the biggest land deed you can pick up, other than a Citadel. And I think that they've said that they're not going to sell to an individual with the Citadel. So, this is the biggest thing you can pick up. So that's top of the line right there. Other villages, you can absolutely look at different ones. They're going to be obviously ranging in sizes and prices and everything like that. But if you truly had a $20,000 or more budget, I don't think you're going to be able. If you have only 20,000, you're not going to be able to buy an Archduke. I hate to say it, it's not going to happen.
If it does, then congratulations.
You've done very well for yourself.
Yeah. You got even luckier than I did.
And so this budget range is kind of just strategy. It's more so pick up a big D that you can afford, fill it with the buildings you can afford, and also get the exemplars you want. Because at this point, you can do whatever you want in Mirandus, more or less. You can have just about whatever you want, besides, the Citadel and maybe the dragons. But yeah, I feel like the strategy would kind of still remain the same as the last category, just a big land deed, matching buildings, and the exemplar to go with it. And obviously horse and probably dragon at that point too, like the dragon familiar. Some matching voxes I feel like would be a good thing to have at this price range too.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends how much, your plus is over that 20K. If you're at 20K, then it's not going to change that much from the previous tier, because that tier went up to 20K. But if you get into that 30, 40, 50, and you know, however much you really want to throw at this, you can start to really seriously take a look at some of the towns. Again, recently a marquee sold for 16.9 ETH, or which at the cash value at the time was 32,000. So,
which is
if you can grab
crazy.
that, that is it's unbelievable considering that these things were selling for over $100,000 at one point.
Yeah,
They're a third of the price now.
Yeah, that's wild actually, because I mean just the buildings alone would probably get close to, well, no, it wouldn't be that expensive. I was thinking
To
that
fill up
it
the
required
buildings?
yeah, to fill up the buildings. What do you think it would cost to fill up the buildings of a marquee?
I don't know. You know, again, it depends on which ones you use. Some are more. You know, you could throw nothing but taverns on there. It'd be probably pretty cheap.
That's fair.
You know, taverns and tents, and you get away pretty cheap. Maybe some camps and stuff like that.
I mean,
and that doesn't make those bad buildings. They're just there's such a high
Yeah.
mint count on those buildings that they're
Right.
they're cheaper because of that.
they're everywhere. If you just assuming that 5x5s are maybe 200 a piece, which I think that might even be too much, but
I think
you're
that's higher than what they are been going for. But yeah,
you're looking at about 4,000 for 5x5s, and then what do you say for 10x10s? Like 500, or is that still too much? Like 300?
you know, storehouses are going for $100, but like.
Wow.
You know,
Okay.
a bakery is $900. A mill is like mills have traditionally been, not traditionally, but since there's somebody who swept the floor. Alum actually swept the floor on the mills, and since then they've never really came back down in price. And this is like going on a couple of years now.
Wow.
Let's see what
Okay.
they're going prices. Like the cheapest listed mill right now is 2.4 ether, 2.48 ether.
That's crazy.
Now the recent sales are a little more reasonable. So in the last few months they've gone for about a third of an ether, a little more.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they're kind of in that $700 to $900 range as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for actual sales.
Right. So you're probably looking at around 10,000 to fill up the buildings for that 30-ish thousand dollar deed. So
Yeah, it gets tough at that point to start filling out every, especially when you get to the largest, because some of them are pretty expensive and rare. Some of them have been trading cheap. Some are expensive and rare. It all depends on what you want, what you're looking to do, what's surrounding you.
right.
You know, what you want to do to some extent, though, what you want to do may not necessarily trump the need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
When you have this much, you know, money, are we allowed to say invested here?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Well, if you have this money supporting Mirandus,
There you go. That's a good way to put it.
you know, you want to make sure that your support is takes care of you.
You want to make you want to make sure your support is
Supports you back.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah. I mean, maybe some people don't feel that way. I can't imagine throwing that kind of money around and not trying to, you know, at least
And
do
just
okay
losing
with
it. Yeah. No.
Yeah,
that makes
exactly.
sense. Certain price ranges are one thing. You know, if you just really want, if you really like the company, and I need to get this light off. It's fine. Yeah, no, certain people may be fine with throwing away certain amounts, but Web 2 gamers getting into Web 3, that's going to be a really tough pill to swallow. Actually, I mean, not really, though, because people spend a lot of money on skins and whatnot, and it's throwing it away, so...
I know people that spend thousands on League, thousands on PoE, thousands on WoW. Like, this if this space can get those Web 2 gamers to kind of change their mindset a little bit away from like, oh, this is pay to win, which some Web 2 games are anyway, even if they're not thinking it that way.
Right.
Even when it doesn't appear that way so much on the surface, but if you look a little deeper, it does. If you can get to kind of change that mindset, because that always seems to be the biggest argument I see from people who are only into Web 2 games is, oh, it's pay to win, or you know, it takes away the competition, or this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, hey, Raid Shadow Legends is a Web 2 game.
Oh, that's like a crazy mobile game, right? I don't do too many mobile games.
Oh man, I love mobile games, and I will admit I fell down the Raid Shadow Legends hole for a while actually. And you know, there are definitely Web 2 games that are super pay to win, that being one of them. So
Mobile games in general, right?
But yeah, pretty much mobile games in general. And sadly, it's a genre that I love, and that's why I've been playing a lot of Dragon Strike. So I'm
You guys are
actually
killing it recently. I passed along leadership, and since then you guys have been killing it.
it's
I didn't really have time. Well, I maybe had time. I kind of lost interest.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. I like it. I'm having fun with it. I've actually made. I haven't quite hit my break-even point yet, but I'm getting pretty close to it, which is exciting because I still have a ton of resources. So my goal is to move some of that, some of those funds over to Miranda's, and it's cool to see that you can spend money in a mobile game now, because I've been playing mobile games for forever. And it's cool that now you can spend money in the game and actually get it back. Like, it's kind of, I don't want to say just now hitting me, but it kind of is. The fact that I've put this much money into the game and then all of a sudden, like, oh, it's back in my wallet and I still have the items that I got too. So it's cool. So I'm excited for
that message. Become a prophet, spread the message. Roam the land.
Yeah. Guys, we can make money back. No. Well, cool. All right. I feel like that's pretty much my thoughts on the whole situation. Do you have anything that you'd like to end with?
No, I think between this video and what we just recorded now and the one you put out the other day, I think we kind of covered most of it. I'm sure other people have other opinions and other viewpoints on it, but this is ours, and hopefully people enjoy the video, enjoy the content.
Absolutely. And again, this is what we would do with this amount of money. So even if you don't agree, then that's fine. And I'm actually kind of curious if you disagree with the strategies that we've kind of talked about, or if you have a different idea, what are your thoughts, or like, what would you do with that? Because this is kind of this is a fun one. Like, this is a fun video to record and actually talk about, because there's so many different ranges and opportunities, and so much it's 100% speculation pretty much at this point. So yeah, what are your all's ideas? Be interested to hear. Also, a couple more things. First thing is, enough people have already said that they wanted the beach video, that we are absolutely going to throw the 8-hour Miranda's beach loop onto YouTube. So that should be up within the next week. Honestly, it might come up before this video. We'll see how the editing process goes. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you guys are looking for a guild within Miranda's, I highly recommend the Masters of Materium. Grill can vouch for me there. We are the biggest guild in terms of assets in the entire game, and we're pretty much open to anybody. So just hop on into the Discord. I'll throw the link in the description, and yeah, love to chat with you about Miranda's, about budgets, about supporting Miranda's.
Right.
But cool. All right. Thank you guys so much, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.